Hi, Dr. Carol Francis. Okay, this is class 1 of course number 4, Managing Relationships. And so this one's about you being able to analyze the people that are in your life and what ways they function. What's their level of health? What's their ease in the relationship? What do they offer you? How do they interface with the facts that you've gone through this abuse or trauma in your life? What is their ability to cope with what they're experiencing because they know what you've gone through? And also, what comfort level you have with them in terms of what you think you want to do in this relationship. How deep do you want this relationship to go? Now, what's really important to know is that not all relationships need to be deep. Not all relationships need to have profound conversations. And in fact, you'll also find that people who know nothing about what you've gone through are kind of like a respite. And you want to take advantage of this conflict-free space where they don't have any history, they don't have any knowing, and you can kind of just live the moment, and that's very important. But there are also those people who will respect you and never ask about what you've gone through. Let me give you just a little stereotype here. Stereotypes are only helpful to, I'd say, like 51% of the time stereotypes seem to have merit. This is a really helpful relationship idea that I find even couples that have no trauma and abuse they really appreciate knowing this. Men are basically taught to not probe into another person's experience. And they're basically taught that if another person wants them to know, that other person will tell them. See? So they have that respect. I'm going to give you the distance and the space that you need because I don't want to encroach on it. And I'm going to just believe that if you want me to know or you need to talk about it, that you're going to bring it up. So they allow the responsibility for communication to be in the hands of the other person, and they kind of wait and dance with it. Very rarely, in the stereotype, so 51% of the time, rarely will they initiate a conversation about it. Well, what's interesting is that women tend to probe and ask questions and want to know, how are you doing, or what's going on? And maybe some will dive right into the deepest part, or others will kind of probe inch by inch and just keep going. They do that in part because they're curious, in part because they also understand that there's empathically or intuitively that something's going on. And number 3, they also understand that sometimes you want to share. Next, though, in addition, women also have this belief that people will not share with them unless they open up the door. So the woman invites the individual to come in. The man says, if you want to come in, I'm sure you'll ask to come in. And that's the way a lot of these conversations go. But here's the rub on this one, right? Is that women who have suffered are feeling very incensed or very unsupported or very not loved by the man that's giving them the space, because they interpret the space as, you don't care, therefore you don't ask to know. I don't tell you because you don't ask. Meanwhile, the man is saying, wait. I was giving you the space out of respect because I didn't want to probe and maybe re-trigger you or harm you or things of that sort. So there are lots of reasons why this dynamic is stereotypically evident about 51+% of the time. Now we could say that all women don't fall in this category, and neither do all men. But what you can do is say one person might just decide to give you respectful distance, and you might misinterpret it as they don't care, when in fact they really deeply do care. And they want to know, how to help, but they're trying not to be intrusive. There are also those other individuals that ask and probe and intrude and so forth and so on because they believe that you want or need to share, and that they're there to let you know, I'm here for you and I'm going to prove it to you by going after this conversation on this topic. But then again, you may be an individual that says, whoa, how disrespectful that you're probing in my space. Give me some distance. So the bottom line is this. I want you now to analyze, in all of your relationships, does that person probe or not? And do they probe because they don't know to probe, they don't know how to probe, or they don't care to probe, or they're giving me a respectful distance? Okay, that's on that level of probing. If the individual does probe and probes too much, and you also want to say, do they probe too much just because they're judgmental and curious, or because they really care and they're just trying to give you this platform to share deeply, and that they're okay with you sharing deeply? And you have to discern, but you also have to be able to communicate to individuals. Hey, you know what? I'd really like you to ask me questions about what went on. And I know it may be a misinterpretation, but when you don't ask, I think you don't care to know. And the other person can say, oh no, you're kidding me? I really do care and I want to know how to help, but I don't want to cause you any more pain. Or, second example, I know you asking me all these questions and wanting to know is because you care about me. I'm just really private about it right now. I appreciate so much you care, but I feel like I need to be kind of private, and maybe down the road I'm going to be able to take advantage of your ability to reach out and really care and really ask me questions. But do you mind right now that we have this kind of chit-chat, lighthearted conversation? I'm not trying to keep you at a distance, but it just is not, I'm just not feeling ready to do it. It might aggravate things I just don't want to aggravate. See, when people come into my office as a psychologist, they essentially are coming in and saying, probe, ask questions, help me, and I know I'm here to tell you. So there's kind of a given. They don't want me to sit there passively and not listen and not care. There are, however, a few therapists that sit back and wait for a person to share. And they just sit back and wait. And for some people, that's the right approach. They sit back and wait, and when you're ready, you feel comfortable, I know you'll tell me what you need to tell. And sometimes they just have chit-chat conversation because the therapist is actually waiting for you to go deeper. Now that can confuse some clients because you're saying, she doesn't even seem to care. Doesn't ask, doesn't probe, doesn't go deep. We just keep it at the superficial level. So you're getting the feel for here that you really need to stay mindful of where you are and where this other person is at. And every other human being is going to be unique. It doesn't follow along the gender lines as I stereotypically lay it out, although it might, and I want you to be mindful of that. But it does definitely pose a way of knowing when someone cares, when they don't, and how it relates to whether they probe or they give you distance. They care by giving you distance, they care by probing. You don't really know. So now there are other things I want you to pay attention to along these lines in this course as well, and I'm going to just kind of read them with you. You're going to take this list, and it is, I want you to list the people in your life who need the following from you. So now this is all about recognizing that people need things from you. Otherwise they wouldn't be in a relationship. Everybody's in a relationship. They need something with each other. You need them, they need you. Now the problem is that sometimes when you've been abused or traumatized, you feel like everybody needs too much from you because you're so completely drained you barely have anything to give yourself. And so you just feel kind of allergic to anybody asking for anything that they need. But on the other hand, if you're wanting to keep the relationship functional, you want to kind of ask yourself, well, what do they really need from me so I can figure out a way to address those needs without actually having to go so deep inside and pull out from all my limited resources. And so there's a list on the knowledge gain that I want you to go through, and I'm going to flash it on the screen right now and let you go through it. Do they need comfort? Do they need information and clarity about your suffering and tragedy? Do they need superficial chit-chat? Do they need instructions as to how to help you? Do they need joint therapy sessions with you? Do they need a functional and practical, reliable relationship with you, like a child might from you or some disabled adult? Do they need to remain ignorant about what you have suffered? Yes, that occurs. Do they need to communicate respect and courtesy to you? And do they need you to communicate respect and courtesy back to them? Do they need appreciation and gratefulness from you for what they have done for you? And do you need appreciation and gratefulness back? And do you know if that individual needs to be completely ignored because they're not all that good for you? Or do they need to be completely ignored because they have really nothing to offer you? a couple of examples as to how you can respond to people. You analyze what it is they need. And just the very act that you're trying to think about what they need is a loving, compassionate act. I mean, in a state where you're probably feeling very needy, here you are really kind of saying, what is it they need from me that I can have clarity about? And in that clarity, you're actually gaining a sense of perspective. Now, you could be wrong in understanding what they need. Really, you could be totally misunderstanding where they're coming from. And in which case, you can actually ask them, do you feel like you need this from me or that from me? And that would be one example. Just inquire. Don't ever assume that you understand the person. I mean, you can assume it and act on it, but you want to also assume you could be really wrong, because people don't always send out clear information about what they need, including you. But to the degree that you can analyze, based on this list, what it is they need from you, then you can create responses to them. So you can say, honey, I know that you need this and this and this from me. I really respect that. And I want to give that to you. I'm going to try to give you this. I'm not sure I can give you that and that right now because of my own awkwardness with myself, my own complications about recovering from this mess that occurred, but I know you need it. I know your needs are authentic, and I want to be able to address them to the best of my ability, but it's going to be a little hard for me. It's not that I don't love you, but I'm kind of glitching on this. Just to say something like that, so that's an example. Just to say something like that gives them kind of a, oh gee, well, I'm glad you told me, and it also gives them a, thanks for understanding me. Or it gives them a chance to say, well, I don't know that I really need that from you. I mean, that's nice, but it's not a big deal. Or it gives them a chance to say, oh, well, I wondered what was going on. I was completely not getting it. I thought you hated me, or I thought you no longer loved me, or I thought you... So communicating is really important. Now, I want to talk to soldiers for just a moment, because I've worked with soldiers ever since the Vietnam War. Long time, right? And I'm not a veterans assistant therapist. I don't work with the VA, but I have worked with soldiers that have sought personal therapy and also with their families. And one of the things I find really consistent is that a lot of the soldiers say, I want to spare my loved ones what horrors I experienced. That, by the way, is very common for all abuse and trauma victims. I want to spare my child. I want to spare my spouse. I want to spare my parents. I want to spare my community. All the horrors that I experienced. You feel like you certainly don't want to have gone through what you went through. Why would you drag anybody else into it? And that may be your point of view. However, there are some family members who will be better able to be supportive if they understand not only what you went through, but also what it's like to recover, because they just don't get it. They don't have any point of reference, and they want to, and they're capable of it, and they're maybe giving you the respect of distance and not probing, or they may be probing, and either way, you may be resisting, or you may be clamming up, or shutting down, or going somewhere else, or talking to your buddies or people who went through the same experience you did. But this individual that wants to have a relationship with you may want to know what happened, what's currently happening, and what is the process of recovery. And that's one reason why I really recommend that if you're going through this course, you also let the loved ones that are a part of your recovery go through this course as well on their own, so they can kind of have an understanding of how complicated things are and how very step by step the process of recovery is as well. So soldiers, I'm going to ask you to consider that there are people who have not experienced what you've gone through and are not tuned into what you're going through now. But if you clue them in deeply, thoroughly, step by step, as you can tolerate it and as they can tolerate it, they can become a team player. Whereas if you don't do that, they are outside. They're outside the stadium. They don't even know what the game is, and they're not even part of the audience. They're definitely not part of the game. And that will cause more to divide the relationship. I just want you to consider if you're in a relationship where that's actually true. There are those relationships where you do not tell a person anything about what's gone on. You just keep them out of it. They can't handle it. They don't want to handle it. They'll be judgmental. They'll be critical. They'll say something incredibly stupid or very insensitive for whatever reasons. Again, they probably need to be educated, or maybe they went through their own traumas and they just don't want to even face yours, or maybe they feel guilty that you even had to go through this. maybe they really don't get it and they're very judgmental and they blame you for everything that happens. I don't know who these other people are, but at the end of this particular class, I want you to know who these people are so that you can know what their needs are of you, how you can manage that by conversation, by stepping in, stepping out, what revelations you need to give them that help them support you, or who you don't reveal things to as well. All of these things need to have some thought put in them. And so that's the type of self-analysis, self-reflection I want you to do in the exercises that are provided for you. I think that's it for today, though. So take care. I'll see you in the meditations.